best way to learn a scale and how can you achieve more when practicing scales so that it saves you time and you learn music quicker? Here are my recommendations for how to learn scales accurately, effectively and efficiently. Hi, I'm Fiona from Learn Music Together, and I help adults grow and develop their musical skills so that they can play music with confidence. And I do that by sharing my Play Music Better methodologies which help you achieve more when you practice. Many people struggle when it comes to learning scales, and just because you know the notes, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll nail them every time when playing scales. As an examiner, I've seen it many times when a candidate makes a mistake in a scale, everything after that then seems to fall apart. And you may have experienced this too in your music practice. Perhaps you thought you could play the scale, yesterday you could, but today you're making frustrating mistakes. In this video, I'm going to run through my best methods for practicing scales so that you can execute them and play them reliably every time. To begin with, you want to practice scales that are relevant to the music that you are learning. And it's best to focus on pieces that are in the same key until you get completely familiar with the pattern. And I'm not just talking about being able to play the notes of that scale ascending and descending, but I'm talking going deeper into understanding how that scale pattern sounds, being able to identify chords and intervals within that pattern so that you really are developing true mastery of that pattern and not just familiarity. The illusion of mastery is one of the most common reasons why learners struggle to retain scale patterns. It's not enough just to learn to play a scale reasonably well and then forget about it and move on to the next pattern to learn. You've got to revisit scale patterns regularly and understand them within their harmonic context. Now, the second part of that last sentence is going to take time and experience. So for now, know that the best way to get started is to form a cognitive connection with the pattern and not just learn the notes through repetition. To get started, you want to learn the notes of the scale in alphabet format. And just in case you're not aware, there are 7 letters in the musical alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F and G. And once we get to G, we return back to A. And all scales follow this pattern of letters. So if we start at B, for example, we'll go up our musical alphabet till we get to G and then go back to A. So B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So the first step, being able to say the letters, is quite easy if we think of them in relationship to the alphabet. Now, of course, each scale pattern does have some sharps and flats, and we do need to know those as well. So let's take, for example, the scale of D major. The first thing I'd do is write out the letters in alphabet format. Now, D major has an F sharp and a C sharp. So if we write the letters out, we get D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And I would practice saying those letters throughout my day until I can say them without hesitating, both going forwards and backwards. So D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, and then backwards D, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp, E, D. Now, for some of you, that may take a day or two, and that's okay. Try and do little and often. This is a wonderful way of incorporating practice into your daily life, because practice shouldn't always be just done at the instrument. We need to engage with what we're learning little and often throughout the day. So saying the letter names of the scale that you're trying to learn frequently throughout the day will help you when it comes to playing the notes. Now, if you're really struggling to remember the notes, think of the alphabet first of all, and if necessary, learn it in little bits. So start with the first 3 notes, D, E, F sharp. Say them forwards, say them backwards. When you think that you've definitely got them, then add on perhaps the next couple of letters, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and practice them backwards as well, A, G, F sharp, E, D. And you could just tag on a letter gradually. But you don't want at this stage to practice the notes, because I'm a firm believer that if you can't say it, you can't play it. Once you're familiar with the letter names, you want to do the same thing with the fingering patterns or combination of fingers. So for example, on the piano, the fingering for D major is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's for one octave. If you were going up 2 octaves, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'd want to be saying those finger numbers both forwards and backwards. Don't forget to say things backwards as well, because so often we can play things really well, perhaps ascending, but descending is where the problems start. So make sure you give equal attention to both. So descending, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Now, if you're on an instrument such as the saxophone, you could practice saying the finger combinations. So D is 6 fingers, E is 5 fingers, F sharp is your middle finger at the bottom, G is 3 fingers, A is 2 fingers, B is 1 finger, C sharp is no fingers, and then the higher D is 6 fingers with the octave key. So I could practice saying 6, 5, middle, 3, 2, 1, nothing, 6 with thumb. And then backwards, 6 with thumb, nothing, 1, 2, 3, middle, 5, 6. If I was on the violin and I wanted to play D major, I could tell myself that it starts with the open string D, then my first finger on E, my second finger on F sharp, and my third finger on G, then I switch to the A string and repeat the pattern. So hopefully that gives you an idea. It will be different for different instruments, but you want to go through the fingering patterns. And at this stage, you still don't want to be practicing on your instrument. What I love to do next is do some visualization. Now, if it helps, you can write down on a piece of paper the letter names of the scale and then underneath the fingering pattern. And you want to spend some time visualizing yourself playing those notes in ascending and descending order on your instrument. Really think about how the fingers move through that pattern. If you can, imagine what the tone will sound like. You could perhaps try singing the notes as you visualize yourself playing them on your instrument. At first, you may lack confidence in this. If you're a beginner or perhaps you've never done this before, know that it's okay to lack confidence. Just give it a go. There's no right or wrong. Well, I guess the only wrong is not to try it in the first place. If you're worried about getting it wrong, know that you have to make mistakes to move forward. We all learn from the errors of our ways. All professional musicians have been, once upon a time, back where you are right now. So my best advice to you is give it a go. Don't worry so much about getting it wrong. Focus on what you have to gain rather than what you have to lose. Once you're confident that you can say the letter names of the notes both forwards and backwards, and you're confident that you know which fingering combinations that you're going to use to play the scale, then and only then should you start practicing the scale on your instrument. Now, to begin with, you don't want to try and play the entire scale up and down. We want to build blocks. This means taking perhaps just 2 notes and making sure that we play those 2 notes evenly with good technical control and with good tonal control. So listen very carefully when you repeat the 2 notes and think about how you can improve them. So often adults are in a rush just to try and complete the task. But to be honest, there's not much point in learning scales if your only aim is to be able to play them correctly in terms of the right notes up and down. Scales are there to develop your technique. They're also there to familiarise you with the patterns that composers use in their melodies. So let's have a look at learning D major. Now, I'm going to use the piano for the purpose of this video, but you can apply this to any instruments. So you want to start by taking the first 2 notes of the scale and just repeat them slowly. So in D major, that's D and E. Make sure you think about your posture, regardless of your instrument. See if you can improve it. See if you can improve the quality of the sound each time that you repeat the 2 notes. When you're feeling confident that you're making your best sound and that the fingers are moving and connecting smoothly, then add on the next note. And again, you'd repeat them a few times, and then when you're ready, you'd add on the next note. And if you play the piano, for example, make sure that when you cross your thumb underneath, that the tone remains even. So what we don't want is... Can you hear the accent that I'm getting when I cross my thumb underneath? This time I'm going to be really aware of my thumb when I cross underneath and try and keep that tone nice and even. And on other instruments, you could think about similar things. Maybe when you go across the break on a clarinet, for example, the tonal quality changes and you might need to practice those two notes to keep it even. On a guitar or on the violin, when you shift strings, for example, or shift hand positions, sometimes the tone changes, and it's those little places that we want to really hone in on and make sure that we're keeping the quality of the sound equal across every single note of the scale. Now, the other thing to remember is you don't need to complete the whole scale in one practice session. It's okay just to focus perhaps on the first 4 or 5 notes. As I mentioned earlier, learners are always in a rush to complete the task. Take your time, because when we spread out our learning, we've actually got a much better chance of retaining it in our long-term memory. So once you've gradually built up the scale, you'll be able to play it slowly, something like this. And then coming back down. Now you want to increase the speed, and to do this you must use a metronome, because we always want to make sure that we're keeping the notes really even and controlled. Now it's a good idea as well to measure your progress. So create a little scales chart. You can start at something like 60 and do 1 note per click. Gradually build that up, 60, 70, 80, 90. Maybe when you get to somewhere like 140, you then try and do 2 notes per click. Now that isn't where scales practice ends. So for most learners, they think, done now, I can play D major scale, we'll move on to the next one. But that's where learners go wrong. We need to do some more work to really build that level of mastery in the scale, so that we can always play D major going forward. You also want to be able to identify the scale within a piece of music. So for example, if you're learning a piece in the key of D major, it's likely that the composer will use the scale at some point within the melody. The difficulty though is identifying where that scale pattern occurs. Not because it's difficult to see a scale, but because composers don't often write the whole scale in the melody. They'll use fragments of the scale instead. Often they'll start on the tonic note, that's the first note, and maybe go up to the dominant note, that's the 5th note. So in the case of D major, they would perhaps just use D, E, F sharp, G and A. So the best way to get familiarity in being able to see fragments of a scale pattern is to practice the scale in fragments. Now you can do this by practicing the scale in what I call crabwise movement. So all that crabwise means, and you can do it in lots of ways, but the most simple is to start on the first note and then go up 5 notes and come back down. So D, E, F sharp, G, A and back down. Then you move up a note and play 5 notes. So then you move up to E, E, F sharp, G, A, B and you come back down. So let me play that for you on the piano so you get an idea of how that sounds. Then we move up 1, remember to keep the fingering correct. And then we move up a note again. Etc. Now as you progress, you can learn to do the crabwise scale so that it flows fluently. So to do that, you go up 5 notes, then down 4 notes, and then up again 5 notes, down 4 notes, and it will sound just like this. develop that in numerous ways. Now you can also play the whole of the scale starting on different notes. So if the crabwise scale seemed a little bit overwhelming, try playing the scale starting from each degree. In effect, when you do this, you're actually playing the modes, but I don't want to get into modes right now. So instead of starting D major scale on the D, see if you can play D major scale but starting on the E, and then have another go starting on the F sharp, etc. So there's a few ideas for how you can develop your knowledge of being able to recognize a pattern but starting on a different note. Now you can also use your scales practice to incorporate other aspects of your technique and save time. You could use different rhythms, for example. So let's say you've got a rhythm in a piece that you want to practice as well. You could use your notes of the scale to practice that rhythm. You could also play the scales with different articulation patterns or different dynamics. Think about the challenges within the piece of music that you're trying to learn and how you can incorporate some of those into your scales practice, because in a way it's like killing two birds with one stone and it will save you time. So let's try playing D major scale now with some different articulation patterns. So rather than playing it legato, which I bet is what most of you do, let's see if we can play D major scale staccato. Another combination might be doing it with two notes slurred and two notes staccato. You could try playing the scale with different dynamics. So let's try and play the scale softly now. You could try playing the scale with a crescendo. It's quite hard to keep the crescendo going when you're descending. It feels unnatural to get louder as we come lower down the notes. So it's a great one to practice because, of course, it's not always the case that the notes go higher when we crescendo. And scales are fantastic once you can play them for developing your rhythm. So you could choose a particular rhythm from the piece that you want to practice and play the scale with that. Are limitless, and it's a great way of incorporating several aspects of the piece that you're trying to learn into your warm-up session. So to recap, make sure you're practicing scales that are relevant to the piece that you're learning. Think about how you can develop them by perhaps changing the dynamic, changing the articulation, playing them with different rhythms from the piece that you're learning. And my last tip is to get creative with your scales. Practice them along to different scale backing tracks. If you go on YouTube, you'll find lots of examples to play along with. Just remember, if you don't play an instrument that's in the key of C, you will have to bear in mind the interval of transposition. There's a wide variety of scale backing tracks on YouTube, all of which are available for free, and you'll see that there's many styles to choose from. So you can get creative by practicing your D major scale with different tracks each day. Not only can you do the scale going just up and down to these backing tracks, you can practice doing different rhythms, you could try the arpeggio, and if you're feeling brave enough, you could have a go at improvising your own melody as well. It's a great way of building confidence and mastery of that scale pattern. into an enjoyable experience full of creativity. And the more you engage and the more you try out things like improvising with the scale pattern, the better progress you will make and the deeper level of mastery you'll achieve in that pattern. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so that you get notified every time I release videos. In doing both of those things, you're helping the channel grow and reach more adult learners just like yourself. Now, you'll also find a link on the screen right now to a video that's about creating warm-up exercises that are related to the piece that you're learning. So today we covered scales, but there are also lots of other things that you can do that will save you time and make learning the notes of that music easier and quicker. Happy practicing, and I'll see you in the next video.